Okay, guys, we're going to get started. So in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Law, I wish to state that on March the 6th, 2015, the notice of this meeting of the Upper Township Committee was posted on the official Township Bulletin Board, mailed to the Cape May County Gazette, the Atlantic City Press, the Ocean City Sentinel-Ledger, and the Herald Times, and filed with the Township Clerk. Tonight's meeting is being video recorded up until the closed session portion of this meeting and will be available on UTTV Channel 97 and on the Upper Township website. I hereby direct that this announcement made a part of the minutes of this meeting. I would ask all to rise for the salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Barbara, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Here.
Mr. Coggins?
Here.
Mr. Pearson?
Here.
Mr. Young?
Here.
Mayor Palumbo?
Here.
All members are present.
Okay. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the minutes from February 23rd, 2015, the regular meeting minutes and the closed session minutes?
Motion to approve. Second.
Is there any corrections, omissions, deletions that anyone's aware of? Okay. Hearing none. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Okay. We will forego the report of the governing body members at this time so that we can do a presentation. We are very fortunate this evening to have, I guess, many of the members of the Upper Township Green Hornets team who recently just won their league championship, from what I understand, so congratulations on that. We're also here to congratulate Jade Phelps on winning the 2015 USA Wrestling New Jersey State Championship. So what I'd like to do is read the resolution in honor of Jade's great accomplishment, and then Hobie will introduce the coach to come up and maybe say a few words, and maybe we can get all you guys up here to congratulate you for winning your league championship as well. So the resolution reads, whereas Jade Phelps, who has wrestled for 3 years with the Upper Township Green Hornets, is having an outstanding season winning the USA Wrestling New Jersey State Championship in the 103-pound 6th to 8th grade division, being the only female to ever win this title. Jade has also won 3rd place at the Select 26th Annual Open Wrestling Tournament and 2nd place in the War of the Roses New Jersey State Championship. Jade has qualified to compete in the Ohio Tournament of Champions and plans to compete in the Mid-Atlantic Wrestling Association as well as the 2015 Girls Folk Style National Championships in Oklahoma City. Whereas it is appropriate that on behalf of the citizens of Upper Township, we congratulate Jade on her New Jersey State Championship title and celebrate the dedication, the hard work, and perseverance she exemplifies in her wrestling as well as a student and member of the Upper Township Indians varsity football team. Now therefore be it resolved by the Township of Upper, on behalf of the citizens of the Township of Upper, to congratulate Jade on winning USA Wrestling New Jersey State Championship in the 103-pound 6th to 8th grade division. So congratulations, Jade. Can you come up and we will give you the honor. We're going to get a big picture for you here, Jay, so we can put it in the newspaper. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Frank, I know you weren't planning on this, but this is Frank Sanino, the head coach of the Green Hornets. And, you know, myself included, I really didn't know what was entailed with what these kids do to get to the level that Jake got to this year. So I thought if Frank would come up, he can explain a little bit about the dedication it takes for her to accomplish what she did. And also all the other young wrestlers out here that won their league championship this year.
Why don't all you guys stand right here? Come up here, if you would.
Stand right down there, face right out.
Front here, face that way.
But the tall guys in the back, that's it.
I'd like to thank the Township for recognizing Jade and her outstanding accomplishment. The level of commitment that Jade and the rest of his team puts in during our season is unbelievable. We're training 4 days a week, we're wrestling matches on Friday night, we're wrestling tournaments Saturday and Sunday, and it doesn't leave much time for friends, for family, for homework, for sleep. It's wrestling season. It's just about all she does is wrestle. And 7 days a week, as I said, it's hardcore. Every night, sweating, bleeding, crying. I mean, you get beat up down there, but she keeps coming back for more. She's an outstanding competitor, and she goes for it. She gives 110% effort all the time. I've never had a complaint, and I'm just glad to be a part of her wrestling career. She's an amazing athlete, an amazing student, and I couldn't be happier with her. We're a proud coach. Thank you, Jade.
While everybody's here, her dad, Scott, and the organization is also trying to raise the funds for Jade to get to Oklahoma. So if there's anybody, or if we can get it out there public for donations, it's a pretty good expense. In fact, her dad's ready to sell a Bronco 2 that he's had forever, just to cover her expense. So I'd like to just put it out there in the papers that we are looking for help to get Jade out there. And we hope a lot of these guys you see here now are going to continue on in some of the other tournaments. The season's pretty much over now, right?
Yeah.
And I know Nikki would be on up 35-7 this year, and 20 pins. And how old are you, Nick? 9?
Took 8th in national.
8. He's 8. All right. And I know Jerry. What was your record, Jerry? 20 and 15. And this kid was wrestling guys 3 or 4 years older than him. So it's I got lucky when I came in as a committeeman to get involved with the wrestling program. And they have an exemplary program with the kids, the coaches, and the parents. And, I think you set the table for the rest of the sports in this township.
And you know what, guys? We appreciate you representing Upper Township. You guys are our goodwill ambassadors, and you make Upper Township residents very proud by your competition. So thanks for all that you guys do. And we hope that you continue with your success in wrestling. And we also hope that you do some homework and get some of those things done as well. So.
She's still an A student?
Yes.
She's still an A student here, so not just an athlete, but a great student.
Look, giving you like stairs, right? Like, come on, guys, you got to get up to this.
This is Scott. Her dad's sitting right here, and again, he's had dedicated his time to his kids, and he does a great job. So we appreciate you having her in the township.
Well, I know that there's probably a lot of dedication that your parents do for you too. So, you ought to give them a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you guys for coming. We're going to let you guys, though, go back home so that maybe you can get a little homework or something done, all right? Nobody has homework? Oh, park. Oh, okay. See you guys. Thanks for coming.
This one is just the second.
You can tell me the coach is remorseless.
I know, it's amazing.
That matches. We'll just clear it out.
See you guys. Have a good night.
be a freshman this year. He's 185 and he is a stud. 6 foot. 14 pounds. It's amazing.
It's great stuff. All right, Barbara, I'm going to come back to you and see if you have anything for us this evening.
I just wanted to remind everyone that our next meeting is on March 30th. Instead of the fourth Monday, it's going to be the last Monday of the month. So that's all I have to report.
Okay.
Thank you.
Daniel.
Nothing at this time, but we do have a number of matters for closed session. Some contract negotiation issues, litigation, safety and security, and personnel.
Okay. Oh, there's Paul. Paul.
Switch it up on me this evening. Thank you. First, I just wanted to let the committee know that the beach fill project is moving on. They're starting their weekly meetings up this week, and they're anticipating mobilizing probably within the next week also. So things are getting closer. As I have updates to the schedule, I'll keep the committee informed.
Okay, and the other thing I just wanted to remind you is that the St. Maximilian Colby Parish is actually going to have their sunrise service in Strathmore this year.
Yes.
Because of all the construction at Beasley's Point, they want to use the beach there for that. And they're looking obviously for where the best beach area would be. I suggested at this point that we look at Vincent and Prescott and those streets because they're pretty good with beach, but I'm going to rely on you to kind of give a little guidance so I can get back to Father Pete on that.
I would probably agree, but I'll give you a final confirmation and let you know so you can let the revenue.
Okay. I mean, it'll be an early service, sunrise. They'll be out, 7:30 in the morning on that day. So.
The next thing I just wanted to update committee. Last year we received a grant from the DEP forestry program to create a forestry management program, which just helps us get a little better education and management of the forest and trees along our right-of-ways and our properties. The grant was for $3,000. Last year I was having trouble finding a consultant to prepare the grant. I did receive a proposal last week to do the grant for just over $5,800, which is obviously more than the grant, so I wasn't sure if the committee wanted to allocate the additional money out of the planning money in this year's budget, or if you wanted me to just let the DEP know that that's something that we're not going to be able to fulfill since we don't have the grant money for it.
Any discussion on that? Questions?
How much was the grant again?
The grant was for $3,000. So, the grant, the proposal, the grant would cover most of the preparing the report, but it wouldn't cover some of the consultants' requirements to attend meetings, both here make a presentation in front of the Township Committee, possibly the Planning Board, as well as some of the departmental meetings that you have to meet with myself, Public Works, and some working groups to kind of formulate the plan itself. So it doesn't really cover his time to formulate and gather material with the different public officials.
And just so you know, it's not a legally required element of our planning. It's just something that DEP has recommended in trying to encourage people with grants. And obviously this is costing not quite double what the grant is.
Again, so it's not a necessity.
It's not required.
And what do you think part of the job task would be? I mean, is that just to go around to the township and what?
A lot of it is to set up the backbone to get, especially the township and Public Works, to be focused on looking and identifying and gaining more knowledge on, tree identification of trees that might have problems, that we take care of them before they become, harmful trees. So it does provide some of that training and knowledge, and that also, to provide some expertise in planning when we go with street trees and different things like that to kind of guide and make recommendations for those kinds of things.
Does it also incur the trees around the homes where they build, around their properties, things like that?
They make general recommendations
Yeah.
and kind of set some of those guidelines up and kind of help get some more expertise for part of the program as we move forward. It would help develop a continuing education program for both, kind of a forest management team to kind of be up to date on forest management techniques and identifying, those
Now, is this a partnership between the public and government, or is it mainly for government?
It's mainly for government.
For government, okay. So this is, without going and get a consultant, we could probably just take care of this in-house. Excuse me.
Would this be something that our environmental commission could get involved in or participate in?
You mean the green team?
Green team, yeah.
Yeah, that would be the part, that's
That'd be the
kind of the partner, that we would draw from, because they look to have both a municipal type of employee and then like a public person, and that's probably where we would draw from, that would be the green team to kind of help partner. But the actual development of the plan is more, you need somebody with a forestry and arborist type background to help develop those management techniques.
So, but the issue is if there's recommendations made, where does that leave the township at this point? I mean, we are very structured with a budget this year, so it's one thing to put a consultant in there, but then if there's something that is identified, it could be a potential issue, that could lead us to some liability issues as well.
Well, I spoke to Paul briefly today. The liability issues, we try to police them ourselves to see if there's any, trees that could cause damage to property in the right-of-ways or whatever. And you're covered by GIF, even if, and your insurance carriers, even if there is a problem. But, we have a process to go through that when there's been some down, we've had an event where there are down trees, we check it and whatnot. And when we had the dead trees from the
Gypsy
moths, we the public works would go out, Paul would go out and we'd do an assessment. So those issues, I'm not too concerned. It is something that would be nice to have. It's your call. It's not legally required. It's kind of like having a planner on staff rather than just hiring one every 6 years or so when you do your master plan review. We don't have a planner on staff. We only hire them when we need to. But some towns hire them and have them there and issue planning reports at every planning board meeting. We don't do that because we're trying to be more economical and we don't think that that's an absolute necessity. So that's the issue you have. How much of a necessity do you think this is? And frankly, I'm not sure we would have done it had we not gotten the grant. I mean, we wouldn't even be having this discussion. The irony of it is the grant is half of what, not quite, a little more than half of what the cost is. So this now has turned into a good idea that didn't look like it was going to cost us any money because we have a grant to something that's going to cost us money. It's still a good idea, but is it good enough to pay extra money out of our budget for it? A lot of good ideas out there that you guys don't spend money on.
Do we lose the grant if we don't do anything? Or?
Yes. Though, I mean, it's kind of a reoccurring grant. We had this discussion probably about 5 or 6 years ago. Kind of in the same position and looking at possibly going in. At the time, we didn't want to spend the money. At the time, we didn't know the exact dollar. We didn't have a consultant proposal cost, so we didn't know what those, ultimate costs were. But at this point, that was kind of green team kind of applied for the grant and helped with me and kind of encouraged the process. So now it's just kind of, now that we have those hard numbers, just needed to bring it back to the community to see if we want to proceed.
Would this be something that, now that we know what the additional cost or the township contribution would be, that we can roll into next year's budget?
We probably could. I think, we'd have to write to the DEP to extend the grant, just like we did this year or last year, and say, hey, we weren't quite ready. We could do the same thing as to say, ask to roll that grant over for 2016 and then reevaluate that budget as the budget process next year.
And possibly, maybe we go.
I would be more comfortable with that
Even
suggestion, to be perfectly honest.
So would I.
We're lean with this budget. I mean, we really have little wiggle room, and, to start adding like things here and there, I think will ultimately leave us short when we get to like October and November, into the fall, late into the year. So if that's a great suggestion. So, if that's something that we can pursue, then I think, it sounds like you kind of have a strong commitment by the committee to move forward if that's the situation.
I'll let the DEP know how we're going to proceed. As we move throughout the year, if things look different towards the end of the year, but we'll look at it for budget season next year.
It might not be a bad idea because we do have this proposal, we do have a grant that you just have a motion and a second and a
Okay.
vote on that. So
You want to make that motion, John, since it was your suggestion?
I'd like to make a motion that we put this grant, or we direct Paul to check with the DEP to see if they will roll this grant forward into next year to allow us to put it on the budget agenda for next year, and then we'll be able to evaluate the project on its merit. And should we decide to move forward, we will be able to budget for it accordingly.
Second. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plummer?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
The next item, I just want to give an update on the farmer's market. We did have another planning meeting. We looked at having a change of venue. So instead of a Trinity Methodist Church, we're looking at having it up at Pastime Place. The Farmers Market Association still has to make an application to the planning board to get a site plan waiver for that area. But it's in the same area where they've been holding the circus probably the last 6 or 7 years. So that's where they're going to be focusing. They're getting ready to send out informational flyers and request the vendors to get sign-ups for the season. But they're looking at the last weekend in June to start up the farmers market.
Great.
With that being on private property, will we be incurring any additional expense there for an insurance policy?
They're still going to want to get some insurance, but that'll be paid out of the cost. That is part of their budget process that they're looking at through the association, that the registration fees that they're going to incur will cover any cost of insurance coverage for that.
Just to be clear, at this point, it's a private nonprofit going to run it.
Correct.
So it's not a township operation, other than they have to get a site plan waiver from the planning board.
So they'd have to have their own
So
certificate
they
of
have to
insurance.
provide
They're
their
going to
own.
have their own insurance, and, well, they don't have to, but they should. Let's put it that way.
And
It's not going to be on township land, it's not going to be a township
That-
operation.
That kind
There's
of
no
frees our
exposure for
liability.
us, yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, they may look to come to the recreation committee to kind of be affiliated like the other sports organizations are with the township, to kind of have some of that partnership. So in case they needed a change of venue, needed to do something at the township, but at this point, they'll be holding it there, looking to be self-sufficient like any of the other recreational programs.
When we talked the other day, the issues that were going on with fees and all that kind of stuff, has that been straightened out?
Yes, yes.
Are they going to be seeking any services from Public Works? Trash removal?
Besides trash pickup and recycle collection.
It's covered under the ordinance the way it is now.
How did it work out with the finances and stuff? Do you mind?
Well,
With the fees, and I know we talked the other day, we weren't sure which way it was going to go, so.
Well, now that it's up at Pastime Place, everything, the fees that are generated through the Farmers Market Association are just going to roll back into advertising and the running and operation of the farmers market.
Right. We'll be paying for the sites for any vendors we would happen to have, if it's any of ours. I mean, it's not going to be our fundraiser as a township.
No. I mean, the green team will have, it's still partners, that's what I'm saying, it still has some connection with the township, but it's still part of the green team function.
So if they charge $25 a vendor, we won't see any of that money, or?
You won't see it because it's not a township operation, that's what I was asking before, it's a private operation now. When it was a township facility, you had some control over it when it was on a township facility.
Yeah, I know, I'm just,
And it's not being run by a township organization.
But most of their costs are going to be rolling right back into covering their insurance, porta potty, advertising, and signage and stuff like that. So at least for the first year, that's what they're covering their costs for.
and the green team seems to be happy with this.
Yes.
I know there was some
Yes.
back and forth with it.
Yep. Yeah, they're part of, the green team's been involved with planning and operation with that. So they're right in line with what's going on.
Okay.
That's all I had to see.
Okay, thank you. Barbara?
I have nothing to report.
Okay. Daniel?
We kind of covered that already, I have nothing but the closed session items.
Okay.
Because we're out of order here.
Oh, we did already. Sorry, I'm going around in circles.
You know, you
Barbara.
have to do that. You're not that
Barbara
much older than
Spiegel.
me.
Nothing this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Mr. Coggins?
We will be voting tonight to introduce the budget. We're a little bit ahead of schedule. The budget will be posted tomorrow on the Upper Township website, courtesy of Mr. Corcoran. The public hearing on the budget will be on April 13th at 7:30 p.m. And I would like to acknowledge Barbara Spiegel for all the hard work that she did in providing the detail and the level of detail that we needed to get the appropriate information to make decisions on how we wanted this budget to go. She made a number of changes along the way. She delivered the information to us in a very timely and efficient manner, and it was a job well done on her part. Mr. Costello, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, that's pretty much sums it up, other than there's no tax increase.
Yes, there is no tax increase.
That's the huge part.
Thank you, that was it.
Thanks. Mr. Young?
Yeah, a couple things to report on. The first part of the lights for Amanda's Field got delivered. They're down in the garage behind the community center. The second part of it, the poles, is scheduled for sometime this week coming up.
I believe Wednesday.
We do have the company all lined up they're going to donate their services to install it, and we're waiting on bids, I understand, or a proposal for the actual augering of the hole and the setting of the base poles.
We actually have them, and they just, Public Works just need to go over the two different quotes and finalize who they want to award it to.
Okay. And then once we get that done, hopefully it'll dry up and we can start doing final grades and get moving on there. I've had Mike out looking at prices on the refreshment stand. We looked at 3 different options. I haven't had a chance to sit down with him yet and really finalize them. It's, the longer we've waited, the more the cost goes up. So we're looking to do something as economically as possible, but also as something that's going to be as maintenance-free as we possibly can, and also be put up as fast as we can without utilizing a lot of township employees. So there's a couple options, and hopefully by the next meeting, we can sit down, Mike, and come up with the pricing and see where we're going to be with it. There was an issue at Amanda's Field with somebody ran through the fence in the snow and broke a couple sections off with that. I think we need to close that gate sooner than later at nighttime when it snows, because people like to go out there with their four-wheelers and go in the pit and do different things, so it's something I think we need to look at. There's no way to tell who did it. This time it wasn't so bad, it was just 2 sections of fence. Easter egg hunt is up and running for April the 29th from 1 to 4.
Not March.
March 29th. We've had 3 meetings so far. It's been attended well. We've got a great bunch of people. Again, we will be looking for volunteers, possibly to help stuff about 3,500 eggs, and also volunteers to help work maybe parking cars and different things that day and working security a little bit. And the only other thing I wanted to address, just for clarification, is that our first game of the year, I talked to Ed and Public Works, and we were going to go out and clear the lines on our field with the snow so that we could play. We went out to try it. The snowplow wasn't going to be feasible, so my brother brought his quad over with his plow, and we cleared the football field. There was kind of some questions as to whether township employees did, and I just want to go on the record that no township employee touched that field with any township equipment. We did it free of will and at no charge to the township, so I just want to get it on public record that there was no township employees or equipment that cleared that field. And that's it.
Okay. Mr. Barr?
Okay, over the past week, of course, we had some snow. And our
We
Public
had
Works
62
Department-
today, though.
Our Public Works Department did a good job again, clearing the streets, and we're keeping our fingers crossed, hoping that our salt supply is going to hold out. So hoping Mother Nature cooperates with us and we make it through the rest of the winter without any more events. So that's all I have to report.
It's done. I'm sorry.
Mr. Pearson?
Good evening, gentlemen. I would like to do the same thing. Kudos to the Public Works Department on their efforts during the last week. It was a mess out there. Kudos to Ms. Spiegel and Mr. Coggins for their hard work on the budget, and to the department heads for their good work that made this thing come through without any tax increase. I think that's wonderful. Bring you up to date on the The vaccinations that we did at the rabies clinic, we had 215 animals seen over the 2 months. There were 176 dogs, 39 cats, and as of this date, we did 716 licenses sold. So it really was pretty good for those two events.
Oh, by the way, I didn't need my shot. The shot's good for me.
You were good. Yeah, and I appreciate you covering for me.
You don't need a rabies shot.
I didn't need the shot.
I said a prayer for you because I thought maybe you needed the shot.
But he needs distemper.
One thing on the plate is that there's the annual 4th of July parade that Strathmere does from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. On the 4th with a rain date of the 5th. And I would move that we send a letter or draft a letter and send it to the county saying that we approve it as the Township Committee.
Okay, that's your motion?
Second.
There's a second. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palmer?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
And one final thing, I'll be speaking tomorrow night in front of the Shore Acres, their group at the Seaville Fire Company. They have their annual dinner, and they asked me to come speak, so I'll be there at 5:30.
Great. I think, Mr. Young, you have
I
one other thing?
had two other things that I forgot to mention. Last year, we approved Christian Chadwick to run our men's basketball program. This year, Chris got a full-time job and won't be available. He's made recommendation that we accept Greg McDonough to take his place. We've met with him, with the advisory board, went over everything with him. We were very happy with what he had to say, so tonight it's just, I need a motion from Township Committee to accept Mr. McDonough as the head of the men's basketball. He will be the one that's responsible for all aspects of it.
So is that your motion? Accept?
Motions.
Okay.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palmer?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Okay. The other issue is probably going to go back to the advisory board. We had the Global Premier Soccer Organization, and the owner lives in the township, Mr. Neil Holloway. They had come into the board about kind of joining hands with the recreation soccer program. And what it is, they also have a program called Premier Soccer. And it's more of a club organization. And the reason they want to try to come to the township with this is a lot of our exceptional talent is going out of the township to play for clubs elsewhere. The meeting with them was really informative. Ed was there. And what we found out is kids really don't get scholarships from the high school soccer program. They get scholarships from the Premier Leagues and the clubs, and the colleges come out and watch them. They wanted to become associated with soccer. We didn't think that was a good deal. I talked to Neil and Gary Harper about it. So they've amended their application, and they want to come in as a separate entity. They're willing to pay a substantial fee to utilize the fields, and it's only, I think, 8 to 10 games is about all that it was. So, I just wanted to get the Township Committee's feelings on this. We're looking at probably around $2,000, $2,500 into the recreation fund for them to play like 8 games. And they're willing, and they'll be playing at Tyler Davis, which we really don't utilize except for practice. But it'll give us a chance to get our really good soccer players into a program without going to Haddonfield and Moorestown and everywhere else.
So it would be within our current ordinance requirements for an outside organization. So
Yeah.
there's a process in place, and as long as it doesn't take time from one of the established sports teams, it's in accordance with the ordinance.
Yeah, and what we suggested to them is, they have it. It's just like Cape Express or any of the other ones, where they started at U9s, U12s, and all the way up. And we suggested that what we want to see is possibly a high school level, and I think we said 7th and 8th grade to start, if we're going to do this. They're already training all of our kids anyway. That's who soccer hires to train the kids. And, myself, I think if we have these kids, and if you look at Ocean City High School, they have exceptional talent. And I hate to see it leave the area. And basically, once these kids get out of 8th grade or out of high school, we have nothing for them here. So maybe this is something, again, that at a minimum, will keep some kids, active and off the streets and keep them heading in the right direction. So I just wanted to get your feelings for it. It's going to be something that has to be approved by Township Committee, so.
Just a couple of questions. On the fee, he said that they were willing to pay $2,500 for 8 games.
Somewhere around 2,000.
That fee's set by ordinance, so it's per field, per day, so that whatever they want to utilize on our fields, we have to stick with the fees in the ordinance, unless we change the ordinance.
And
This is a for-profit entity, and they will be charging people to participate in this.
Correct.
What will the township's exposure be in terms of seeding the fields, maintaining the fields, sending people to clean up afterwards? Have we done an analysis of how many man-hours we'll have to put to that, and what those costs
So
will be?
the seeding and everything else we already do. The field maintenance won't change. And the trash pickup will change.
Maybe I could be a little more clear the way it's supposed to work. When any outside organization asks to use our facilities, they have to have a plan in place. Public Works is supposed to review it, address those questions that you just had. If there are recommendations or anything additional that's needed, they're supposed to ask for that, and the charge of that. For example, if it requires additional cleanup, we should find out how much it's going to cost, make sure either they do it or contract it for it or pay for it. As far as the wear and tear on the fields, Public Works is supposed to look at the fields before and after an outside group looks at it, works on it, and determine whether or not they can continue to use them, or whether or not there is additional expense due to their use of the fields, or those determinations are supposed to occur. That's the way the ordinance and the rules were set up. So there's a mechanism in place to address all that. I can't tell you day to day how it's done. I defer to the Public Works Department.
And they had mentioned 2,000. I think they had said that's what they paid somewhere else.
Yeah, they were paying.
Well, the thing is, we can't charge anything other than what the ordinance says unless you change the ordinance.
But they could make that donation.
They could donate, but that's up to them. The bottom line is we can only charge them what the ordinance says.
And,
And that's something we were looking at one point,
We
all
have
of
to
our
look
fees,
at
as to whether or not outside organizations should be charged more because of the issues you were just discussing.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we also discussed with them that if this does come across, that they will not take kids out of Upper Township that will hurt the Upper Township Recreation Program. So if it was something where, let's say the U-10s, the bulk of the kids were coming over and it was going to hurt the
That would be
recreation
the
program,
they'd have to get recommendations from the sports and
Yep,
and
they would
and
squash
Recreation
that
Advisory
age.
Board
Squash
to
that age.
incorporate into any approval.
This also includes insurance and hold harmless
They have
statements
to
by
have all
the,
that.
They have all
to
that
sign
already,
agreements. They have to have it in place. They don't get on the fields until they have it. They also have to contact the state police because sometimes the numbers are significant.
Right.
They also have to contact the fire and rescue. In some events, we require them to pay for police officers and EMS to be there.
Yeah, and they don't draw that many people. That's the thing. I mean, it's a small. They have 1 or 2 games at a time. And what do you have? 11 kids on the field at a time. The average team is 15 players. So it's not like you're going to have 200 or 300 people out there. It's not that kind of an event.
And I believe they only asked for 1 field, correct? Tyler Davis?
Yeah, Tyler,
So they
Davis
already
is the only
picked out
field they
one
want to
field.
use. And like I said, to me, that's underutilized already. The thing that's used for it this time is training, which they're already using it. The advisory board felt that as long as it wasn't associated with our soccer program, then they really didn't have a lot of problems with it, as long as the fees were covered on a 1-year trial basis and see where it went. But Al wasn't there, Ron wasn't there, so I told them, no vote from us until after we come back before we
I would
retire.
suggest that there shouldn't be any vote tonight as to whether,
No.
because you don't have enough information.
No.
But as long as in principle, he's reporting that this could occur, and as long as it abides by the ordinance, and frankly, if it abides by the ordinance and they do all the recommendations that everyone has, or fulfill all the recommendations, you really have to let them use it unless there's a legitimate reason that you can't.
Yeah.
It's either used by someone else or there's too much damage to the field.
And one thing we're
whatever.
seeing, the demand is field, is it's just like when lacrosse has their lacrosse tournament, and we have a football game that day. They do very well on the refreshment stand. It's a big fundraiser for them. And the same thing, bringing these outside entities in, I think sometimes we have to look beyond some of the minor issues, if it's going to generate more money back into our programs to offset the cost for the parents. And this has potential for that, so. And as far as I know, township kids would probably be given a reduced fee to join their program. This is an elite program. It's not for an average kid. So, just, yeah, I wanted to throw it out there so you're aware of it. Ed, you got anything else to add on that?
No, I think you hit everything. And then the ratio, they're gonna talk about the ratio.
Yeah, we were gonna talk about
amount of kids
ratio.
that Upper Township has to have on the team, and also their main concern, they don't wanna pull kids away from our
Rec
rec
program.
program. So it's the same situation we've had with some of the other teams.
I think there's about 6 or 7 programs like this throughout the state of New Jersey right now. And unfortunately, Cape May County does not have one. So all these kids are leaving and going elsewhere. But just want to get your feelings on it before I take it back to the rec committee.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it.
Right, I only have one quick thing. I received a letter from Dale Foster, the county engineer, and they've received federal funding in the amount of $1.3 million to do a portion of Commonwealth Avenue in Strathmere. What they'd like to do is to move forward and potentially get an additional federal grant that will cover the entire length of Commonwealth. And they're asking us to have a resolution in support of this. Basically, what they said is historically the county has been successful in obtaining full funding for federal aid projects, and they felt that if they were successful in securing the extra federal funding needing to do the whole construction, that they would do it in 2016 and stop the resurfacing during the summer months to avoid, problems with the tourist season. And this will include curbs for stormwater drainage. The one thing they are saying is they're not proposing widening the street, but it will be marked, better for parking and those kind of things. And what they're looking for is a resolution in support of this so that they can continue to move forward with the federal grant to get the entire project underway. The one thing that they did say that there will be a 5-year moratorium on any road openings. So what's important is that the property owners that are situated on Commonwealth be notified, because once this project starts and moves forward, that they will not be allowed to open up the street for any reason for 5 years. And that gives over a year, because we're talking 2016, a year from now. So I would suggest and make a motion that we do a resolution in support of this. Anytime we have an opportunity to resurface roads at no cost to the township is something that's very viable, and we should move forward with it.
A second.
Let's call the roll, please.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Okay. So now we've reached the portion of the meeting where we're going to address the budget, the cap ordinance, and the budget introduction. So I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Coggins, and then I'm sure we'll work with Mr. Costello as to the procedures that we move forward with this.
Okay, well, I'd like to make a motion to introduce the first reading of our ordinance, number 005-2015.
Second.
Can I raise a question on the budget?
Sure.
When we sat on this 2 weeks ago, and it was kind of quick going through it and glancing at it, I didn't really realize until after the fact.
This is not the budget, this is the cap ordinance.
Oh, the capital, I'm sorry, then we'll wait.
Okay, so if there's no other discussion, would you call the roll?
My bad.
This is a motion for the cap ordinance?
Yes.
Yes.
Number 210.
Sorry about that.
Okay, Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Okay, and second, I would like to make a motion to introduce the 2015 budget and a public hearing for such scheduled for April 13th at 7:30.
Okay. Second. And now it's appropriate to make a comment.
Again, in reviewing the paper after I got home that we were presented that night, it's when I realized that all money for anything that the 4th of July, any videos, anything like that, which we were going to use to promote our programs, has been cut from the budget. Yeah. If there's any way we can get some of that back in, we were planning on using that as a commercial for 97, Channel 97 and everything, just like we did last year.
Well, one of the options would be to find the money necessary somewhere else in the recreation budget that we can, reduce the spending on of an equal amount.
Yeah, and truthfully, with where we are right now, with the projects we got going on, I don't see the room in the recreation budget. We were over last year. There wasn't enough appropriated the year before. And if we cut it anymore, we're not going to have fields ready. We're not going to have anything done that needs to be done for the kids. So it's just, if there's any way we can do something with it, even with half of what was there, we can minimize what we're doing. But what we had hoped to do is do something for each of the affairs. There's 4 affairs, to roll it into our highlights for next year to make it even better.
How much money were you talking?
Ed, they were your figures, buddy.
We have $1,900 for the 4th of July videotaping.
We're looking at a potential of $2,000 income from that organization you were just talking about, so that would cover that.
I'm sorry, what was that?
We're looking at possibly $2,000 for that organization that you were just talking about, the soccer organization.
Yeah.
So that would help cover those.
It's
But-
quite possible that the taping of the 4th of July event could maybe come out of a committee line. We did take some of the expenses last year from the committee's line.
Yeah, I know we had some money earmarked in there for each event, so that we could do some filming for each event.
We also have to pursue more of a public sponsorship as well for some of these activities.
Well, we have.
But I'm saying, beyond that, and I'm not sure how we can, if we're allowed to advertise or whatever, but, if it's something that we're going to put a video together and somebody's willing to sponsor it, we can give them acknowledgement somehow, I would think, as a public donation, correct?
Well, any sponsor, any sponsor that contributes at this point, their name would go on a ribbon underneath. And whenever our highlight reel was put on, it would say sponsors so-and-so and so-and-so. With 4 events, if we start hitting the people that are contributing the money for 4 events, we're going to start getting, and then we go after them again.
Well, here's what I'm thinking. Maybe I'm thinking way out here, but when you look at public television or something, there's always grants that's sponsored by some educational grant. So I think you have to look beyond the local sponsorship and go to like Coca-Cola or some larger corporation that may have funding for something like this as almost like an arts grant or something where you're having somebody film something. So, that may be a project that we personally have to take on, but I could see us, possibly getting some sort of reliable sponsorship from a bigger corporation as a non-educational grant, funding provided by, just as, public television does. And I think, in an effort to try and, keep the budget maintained, and if we have some wiggle room with some things that we can cover, we will. But I would certainly be willing to work with you to come up with that kind of opportunity.
Yeah, but right now what we're doing is to keep the cost down to everyone in the township, the sponsors.
And
are offsetting
that's
the
what I
cost
understand,
of
but I'm thinking,
those things. So just so everybody's clear.
right,
Yeah.
but I'm thinking more broader picture, like we have a Frito-Lay company here, we have Coca-Cola. I mean, there's some large corporations here that might potentially have the kind of sponsorship that we're looking at. And they'll get the advertisement.
It's something that we've looked at and we've considered at the meetings, and that's a next year goal for us. But again, to have the highlight reels to present to them and say, this is what we do, is a lot stronger than just coming in and saying, this is what we're doing. So, even if we can get something where we can shoot a little bit at each other, I mean, I just want to throw it out there before we go to, hearings on it. If there's any way around, we can. I think we need to look at that.
Hobie, maybe we could also reach out to Stockton College and their communications division, and possibly they come down and do it with us and save some money there too. They might be a student project,
Looking for every option I can to try to get visibility out there for the township.
Yes.
So.
Any other comments? And by the way, there is no public comment at this point. So we will have a public hearing, as Mr. Coggins said, at the first meeting in April. And you'll have an opportunity to, give us your thoughts at that point. Or you're also allowed at any time to send an email or some sort of written documentation as to a comment that we will put in as a part of the minutes, if you have any public comment that way. So does anyone else have anything before we vote on introducing the budget? Okay, hearing none, would you call the roll, please?
I just have one thing. I'm required to
Okay.
read the budget notice prior to the vote. And the budget notice reads as follows. The budget of the Township of Upper, County of Cape May for the fiscal year 2015. Be it resolved that the following statements of revenues and appropriations shall constitute the municipal budget for the year 2015. Be it further resolved that the said budget will be published in the press in the issue of the 24th of March 2015. The governing body of the Township of Upper does hereby approve the following as the budget for the year 2015. Now I'll call the roll. Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
So would you like to give us some thoughts as to?
Yeah, okay, what you just discussed a few minutes ago is, this is the introduction, it's not the final, obviously. And when you get to April 13th for the public hearing, that, you can change one line, you can change every line. There's some parameters on how much you can change them by and still adopt that night, but it's still open. It's not the final vote tonight. April 13th will be the final vote. So if there is some modifications you want to make, as long as they're not more than 10% of any one line, you can do them that night and then adopt it that night. So you still have time. It's definitely not a closed budget as it stands right now. And you do have your state aid, so that we're all done with that. It's the same as it's been, I guess, 4 years in a row now. It's the same number.
So the state aid, and based on what we've proposed at this point, it's a zero tax levy.
Yes.
And because we're going through a revow, that adjustment still is yet to be determined. Is that correct?
You're raising the same amount of taxes, no
Yes.
increases last year. Because of the revow, depending upon everyone's relative values being adjusted, will depend upon whether or not they pay more or less taxes next year. For example, if they were paying too much of their fair share last year and they got reduced down compared to everybody else, they'll pay less. If they were paying too little because they were underassessed, they'll pay more compared to everybody else. In other words, you're not going to know your own tax bill until all the tax bills are out.
But I think it's very important to note that even with the increases that we have a budget that is no more than what
You're
we
not
spent
collecting
last
any
year.
more money, correct?
And I think that's very significant. And again, I know there's been kudos to Barbara and John and a lot of other folks, our heads of departments, and then each one of you took your responsibilities for what we are liaisons to our departments. And it was a great team effort to get us to this point, because I would venture to say there's very few towns that are able to accomplish what we've done this year. So, and not to say that we're better than anyone else, but it just goes to show you, if you work very hard, you can get to where you need to be. Okay, so we already called the roll.
You're done.
We're done.
Yeah.
And April 13th is when we'll have the final hearing.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Costello, too.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thanks,
for
sir.
coming.
Thanks,
Leon.
Leon.
Thanks, Leon. Good night.
Take care.
See you, Leon.
Okay, Barbara, would you like to work now with the resolutions?
Yes. Item number 4 under resolutions, congratulating Thomas H. Heiss, Risk Management Consultant of Upper Township, for receiving the 2014 Atlantic County Municipal Joint Insurance Fund Special Safety Incentive Recognition Award.
I'll move the resolution.
Second?
Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 5, appointing Anne Marie McMahon to the Upper Township Security Committee.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 6, changing the name of the Upper Township Safety Committee to the Upper Township Safety and Wellness Committee.
Move the resolution.
Second?
And just, one of the reasons why we did this is we do have a wellness clinic that we have every year, and there's active participation from the safety committee. In fact, I believe, Mr. Pearson, this was your recommendation to
Yes.
extend the name to more identify better what the safety committee is actually accomplishing. So,
Correct.
would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Colombo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 7, adopting revisions to the Upper Township Supervisors Personnel Policies and Procedures Manual and Employee Handbook.
Move the resolution.
Second?
Mayor, if I could interject, that previous resolution would also require changes to the policy and procedures manual. I just was thinking about that.
Because of the name?
Yeah, because of the name, because that follows through in the employee handbook, so.
We can deal with that. I mean, obviously,
Okay, I just want to make
It's
sure,
a-
because it didn't mention that in that resolution or this one, such one.
well, when we next revise it, we'll correct the name of the committee. No one would ever interpret that.
Okay.
The new committee doesn't do the functions of what the policy and handbook says they're supposed to do.
Yep.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Colombo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 8, approving the application of the Tuckahoe Fire Company for highway plume drops.
Move the resolution.
Second?
Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Colombo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 9, authorizing a change order for the NJTOT Municipal Aid Project reconstruction of Bayview Drive from north of Sumner Avenue to north of Webster Avenue contract, resulting in an increase in the amount of $4,688.
Move to authorize?
Second.
Would you call the roll?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Colombo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 10, authorizing the township engineer and purchasing agent to solicit bids for antenna license agreements on the cellular tower site located at 1721 Mount Pleasant Road, Tuckahoe, New Jersey.
Move the resolution.
Second?
And Dan, this will be put out as a public bid? I mean, how?
There'll be a public bid for antennas on the tower. There are two there now. We expect that they'll bid and remain on the tower. There may be other people bidding and new antennas on the tower.
Okay.
We have a cell tower consultant that is assisting us with the license agreement, so it's consistent with an industry standard.
Okay. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Colombo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 11, authorizing the purchase of monitors, a projector screen, and accessories from the 2013 Capital Improvement Bond Ordinance in the amount of $8,038.30.
Move the resolution?
Second.
Before the vote, I just want to make the committee aware that back in February, it was brought before you, and it was discussed that the cost may only be $4,000. As we finalized quotes and all, we found that the cost went to about $8,000, just so you're aware.
And that also, because of this change, we won't have too many fixture and structural problems with this, right?
That's correct.
Correct, yeah.
That's correct.
Okay. So there's a first and second. Would you call the roll?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Colombo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 12, the 2015 revised temporary budget, and this is the second one. Number 2.
Move to authorize?
Second.
Call the roll?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Colombo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 13, under ordinances. Public hearing and final adoption of ordinance number 1, 2015, an ordinance authorizing the sale of lands for block 417, lots 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10.
Okay, before I open it up to the public, is there any final comments from the township?
No.
Okay, would anyone in the public like to address the ordinance 1, 2015, authorizing the sale of land, so block 417, lots 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10? Okay, let the record reflect that there was no public comment, and I'll close the public comment portion and entertain a motion for adoption.
Move to adopt.
Second?
Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 14, public hearing and final adoption of ordinance number 2, 2015, an ordinance authorizing the sale of lands for block 424, lots 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, and 60.
Okay, again, is there any comment from the committee? If not, I'll open up to the public. Is there anyone that's here to address ordinance 2, 2015? Again, it's authorizing the sale of lands, block 424, lots 51, 2, 3, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, and 60. Yes. You have to come up to the microphone, please.
I'm not really sure what either of these ordinances are, 13 or 14, but,
So you're
How much
commenting on
are-
14 at this point, right? Because
Okay, but,
13
you know-
we've already,
okay, but are they two different people buying them?
I didn't hear what you said.
Are they
she
two
wants to know if they're two different
Same-
people.
Yeah, they're related people. One is Ralph Clayton, and the other is Ralph and Dolores in a corporation, I believe. They own undersized lots, and the township owns lots next to them. They've agreed if they buy these, that this will just become part of their larger parcel. It will not create a larger, another separate lot. So it's not going to be developed, other than the development that's already allowed on the one lot. Secondly, one of the lots, they're the only contiguous owner, and the value was established as, by an appraiser. On one set of lots, there's another contiguous owner, and by law, we offer it to both contiguous owners under the same conditions. That minimum bid was established by an appraiser. And that's all according to statute and ordinance. And the township committee is authorized to sell the land because it's not productive land that will now become productive. It doesn't create any burden on the tax system because it's becoming part of another parcel. In fact, it becomes taxable land, where it was not taxable before.
How much land are we talking about?
I defer to the engineer, I don't know off the top of my head.
Each one of those little lots are approximately 20 by 100.
And what is the selling price?
We don't know yet on the one, on this one, the minimum established bid is $5,600. On the one prior, even though that had already been adopted, that minimum was $4,645. Again, established by an outside appraiser.
Okay, do you know what they looked at in order to make the appraisal?
You can get a copy of the appraisal at the township office. It's a licensed New Jersey appraiser that looks at comparables of similar types of sales.
And again, this land is deed restricted to the existing lot so that it puts non-taxable land on the tax rolls.
It's also undersized lots that are being consolidated with other undersized lots.
But they'll all become one lot?
Yes?
Yes.
And then what? Will that stay vacant, or is it going to be developed?
There's already an existing home on the lot. This is the adjoining properties to make the existing lot larger and more in compliance with the township requirement.
These are not unusual requests. We get them occasionally. Sometimes people want to build an addition and they don't have enough land, but the township owns lots that they're not using and will never use. One of the determinations in the ordinance has to be that it's not going to ever be needed for public use. The township has hundreds of these type of lots scattered throughout the township.
So these particular lots will all become part of one residential house that will never be able to be separated
Yes,
or added?
Right.
that's a deed restriction that goes as part of the ordinance, it's in the ordinance.
Okay, and the appraiser, how'd you find the appraiser? The appraiser that did the appraisal?
What about,
Who picked the appraiser?
the township has recommended this appraiser before, it's not just for this transaction, it's a appraiser by the name of Louis Bonato. He lives in the township. He has years of experience appraising properties for banks and other institutions.
So because it's professional services, you just pick him? You don't put it out for,
It's not subject to public bidding, it's just like if they hired an engineer or a surveyor or an architect or a lawyer, yes, that's the process.
okay, thank you.
Okay. Is there any other public comment? Okay, hearing none, let the record reflect that we've had one resident comment. So at this time, I'll close the public portion of the hearing and entertain a motion for adoption.
Motion to adopt?
Second?
Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Cobb?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Eric Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 15, under correspondence, is the 2014 GIF Safety Incentive Program Award.
And I would invite Terry Smuns, our safety coordinator, to speak about this.
Good evening. Terry Smith, and I'm an employee of Public Works. We were the recipient of the 2014 Safety Incentive Program. Actually, every member of the Joint Insurance Fund achieved this award, and that's I have never seen it. Usually there's some town that lags behind, but everybody made it this year. Because of our medium size, we will receive $1,250 to spend in celebrations for our performance. So that was a good thing. Along with Tom, Tom's award was a special award. He was one of 4. So that's a big deal for us. That's like the Academy Award of Safety Awards, to me, anyway.
Well, we're glad to hear that. You know, I know that that we take safety and we take risk into real serious consideration, and a lot of the recommendations over the past several years have really been very positive ways to address things that could potentially be of risk to not only our employees but also the residents. So, you know, all the work that you do for us and those that make the recommendations, and Mr. Heist has done a fantastic job for us as well. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you. Also, one other thing before I go, the Safety and Wellness name change is in direct correlation with the GIF. They actually have a wellness initiative this year, and they are hiring a wellness director to come out to all the towns. We also need to appoint a wellness coordinator. Probably somebody on our safety committee would be a good choice, or whatever you would like to do. But to keep us, they have biggest loser programs, they have walks, they have all kinds of things for your most valuable asset, which are your employees. So that's another thing for the GIF this year.
Great. Thank you so much for all that you do for us as well.
Oh, you're welcome.
And I want to know who's planning a little celebration, since that's what it's used for. I mean, we get the money to do that, so we're talking lunch or something. So.
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, we'll do it.
Good.
We'll get something done.
Okay.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, item number 16, under new business. Greater Tuckahoe Area Merchants Association requests to hold a raffle, number 445, on May 2nd at Amanda's Field.
Move the resolution.
Second?
Call the roll.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Eric Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Would someone like to make a motion to pay the bills?
I hereby move that all claims submitted for payment at this meeting be approved and then incorporated into the full minutes of this meeting.
Second. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Goggins?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
There were a number of reports from our municipal departments, tax collector, MUA report, 2004 Community Forestry Services report, and construction code. These will all be available tomorrow upon request at the clerk's office, but I'd like to make a motion to accept these reports.
Motion to accept?
Second.
Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
I mean, Mr. Goggins, I'm
Yes.
sorry, excuse me.
Yeah.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Before I open it up to the public, I think that Mr. Barr has one other thing he would like to bring up.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. There was something that was brought to my attention. Thank you to Ms. Spiegel over here. Unfortunately, our shredder is finally unrepairable. We provide shredding services to the public, and we also use the shredder to shred any of our sensitive documents that we have here in Town Hall. In order to continue that service, I would like to make a motion that we purchase a new shredder. There are two, I did break it down into two categories. If we decide not to provide any more service for shredding to the public, we would go with a more economical shredder, which would be about $12,000. However, in providing the service to the public, I would recommend that we purchase the shredder that we have for $23,400.
Now, is that something that could be put?
That would come out of our recycling fund, correct?
If you so desired, we could have a resolution to authorize that this shredder be paid for out of recycling money.
Well, I know that the service is utilized by a number of residents. You know, and in many ways, you look at shredding personal documents versus burning them in fireplaces and everything else. I mean, from an environmental standpoint, it certainly makes sense. And to offer that service, I think, makes sense. The only thing that I would wonder is, can we provide an outside service? You know, if this is $23,000, I know that there's companies that actually drive up with a truck. They have a major shredder in the back of the truck. And if we could look at some prices from that, compare it to what it costs to replace this we have.
done
Yes.
that.
And what are we talking about?
It's correct me, Ed, it's $1,500 per day.
Yes.
When the truck is full, it leaves. But typically, we do this once a month for the residents.
Well,
12 times 1,500.
but that would mean that we'd only be able to shred our own documents once a month as well. Was that done more often?
We do use it to shred our own documents as we get the approval from the state to shred documents. We do shred our own.
Yeah, then the volume, you can't anticipate the volume, and unfortunately, when the truck's full, it leaves. So you're limited to that. And then, right now, having our own shredder provides convenience to the public to be able to come in and shred on given days.
And that is, we have money to cover that?
Currently we have over $110,000 in the recycling trust account.
You know what, that's what it's used for. And so
Makes sense.
I would agree. So you want to make a motion to get the heavy-duty one so that the residents can continue to be able to utilize it as well?
Yeah, make a motion that we buy the industrial grade shredder.
Second?
Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Goggins?
Yes.
Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Okay. So at this time, I'd like to open it up. If anyone from the public would like to address the Township Committee, now's the time to do it. Please come up and state your name and your address and whatever comment you have for the Township Committee. Yes.
Kevin Grove, Greenfield. I have a couple questions about the farmer's market. The vendors that are coming in, do we know what the vendors are all selling? Are they just selling produce, or what are they all selling?
The vendors can sell produce and crafts. There's criteria. There's actually an application to sign up to be a vendor. They're looking at primarily for produce vendors that are producing or having something made in, that they've grown in New Jersey. For crafters, they're looking at homemade crafts, so they're not looking at reselling things that you bought at a store and reselling things.
Okay, so they're not gonna bring in other types of merchandise, you go to, like, for instance, let me give you an example. You go to Usell Flea Market, you see people selling, NASCAR memorabilia, you see them selling, radio, stereo equipment, stuff like that. Is that potentially some things that could be brought to this farmer's market?
Not at this point, no. They're trying not to create a flea market. It's particularly to be a farmer's market.
I mean, typically what farmer's market has is obviously produce. There may be someone that's selling cheese or something like that. I mean, I've been to farmers markets where they have that. And then, it would be, there's people that sell flowers, or plants or something like that. Maybe some outdoor craft or decoration or something like that, but not the idea of what you're talking about with the flea market. It's more associated with the overall, the one part, the produce part, and then the craft part of it. It's produced, in-house usually, something like that. It's not mass produced.
Is this going to be patrolled by anyone to see that this is the only things that are sold at this, or are you just going to go off of somebody's word that this is what they're going to have?
The association will govern that as part of what
The reason I'm asking a line of questions is I've been to swap meets and Usell flea markets, and I don't know, do these people pay taxes on the stuff that they're going to sell? Do we know that they pay taxes on it?
That's up to those vendors of what they sell to report to the appropriate taxing authority.
Okay. And the reason I address this is because, like I said, I've been to Usell flea market, I've been to swap meets, Englishtown, and when I was there, the IRS came in and basically, for lack of a better term, raided the swap meets at different times. And the vendors vacated, leaving all their merchandise and took off running. And because they weren't paying taxes on anything. And my question is, if the IRS were to do this, would this put the township in any kind of position, liability position? Because then if they abandon, because if they abandon their merchandise or whatever it is they're selling, if it is stolen material, does that fall on the township now in custody of stolen material?
Well, first of all, it's not going to be on township land that this project's taking place. And second of all, that's why we have the Green Team Board that is, which is mostly making up the Farmers Market Board, to prevent something like that from happening. Okay. Is there 100% assurance that that couldn't happen? No, but that's, I mean, typically farmers markets are very successful, and there are a lot of local farms that bring in their produce and sell it on a one-day opportunity. And they are legitimate businesses that not only would be at the farmer's market, but also at their own stand, usually by the farm area.
You're assuming, because you wouldn't know who they were until they would be here.
Well, there's criteria for some little background checks on the people that are there.
We're not running it. That's the thing that needs to be made clear. If it was done on our property, that may be something we could possibly control and would have the right and authority to control. But this is not being done on our property. The only thing we can really control is the land use element of it, which is what the planning board will look at when the site plan waiver goes in. Just as the planning board doesn't ask ShopRite whether or not you pay your sales tax, and are you going to just assume you're going to abide by the law, they would assume the same thing with these folks. It's not our jurisdiction. If ShopRite left a trailer of food laying in the middle of the street, we'd have to deal with it, but there are other laws to deal with that.
Okay. All right. My next question has to do with Amanda's Field and the lights at Amanda's Field. Obviously, I have a football team that's in Amanda's Field, that plays in Amanda's Field, also in Betts' Field. So I'm traveling in and out of Amanda's Field. And I'm curious, this possibly has been addressed already. If not, I don't know. I've only been attending a couple meetings. But my question is, what's such the urgency to get these lights put up in Amanda's Field when there's no fields for lights to be lighting? The fields are totally torn up and destroyed and gone, and they're in the process of redoing it. So what's the purpose of the lights?
Because the lights have to be put in place before the fields can be completed. One of the things that needs to be addressed is the conduits and everything has to be run under the fields, so that you don't do it after the field's all groomed and ready to go. It's put in prior, and then the sod or the seeds and everything are then put in afterwards.
Well, that's my point. They created the fields and they built the fields approximately 10 years ago. I don't know an exact date. And there was no lights. Why weren't they done prior to originally building the fields? I mean, they had concrete in for dugouts. They had fencing up. They had, the swales all dug out the way that apparently they needed them at the time. Why weren't they put up then?
It was a matter of putting priorities with other issues, and so it's being done right because it's being funded, and we've also received, some grants to do some other things at Amanda's Field, and the timing is now to be able to do it.
If I can add, that's part of our consolidation plan. As we talked about earlier, what we're trying to do is we're trying to consolidate our fields and trying to put them into one central area. And as we've discussed several times up here, there was an agreement that was made with baseball years ago in putting lights if they were to be moved. And that's what we're gearing up for right now.
My next question is, if you're moving the fields, the baseball fields, how come the fields in the back of Amanda's Field that have been in existence for the last 30, 40 years they don't have lights? They're not getting lights there instead. They're putting them on new fields that don't exist as of right now, as opposed to fields that are already existing and people utilize. How come you're not putting lights there?
So about the softball fields in the back?
Yeah, the softball fields in the back, which was a soccer field, which is the same as using it for baseball.
Because we designed these fields out front. I mean, the fields that are out front are going to be the new baseball fields.
And so you understand, the baseball team, the baseball organization paid for the lights of the Little League field. And they were told when they did that 15 years ago, I'm not sure exactly how long it was, that there's a possibility that baseball could be moved to Amanda's. So the agreement was, if you build the lights there and you pay for them, if we ever move you, you'll get comparable facilities. It's comparable dugouts, comparable lights. That's the agreement that the association had years ago with the Township Committee. So that's why there's lights now being put on the baseball field, probably before a soccer field or whatever. Because baseball actually paid for the lights at Caldwell.
Okay, so who originally paid for the fields to get built in Amanda's Field?
They were done through the development fees from what whenever we have subdivisions and stuff, there was allocations of money put that way.
Developers had to pay money rather than put a field in their development. Rather than put, like if I have 25 lot subdivision, there's a requirement that you put a basketball field, a court, and a football field or a baseball field in your development. So what happened over the years in the 80s and 90s, fees were paid in lieu of, they put a lot there, a building lot there, and in lieu of that, we'll give you money to have a centralized facility. That was the planning theory back then. So they had money from the developers who developed the land, and that's how they developed, that's the funds they used to develop the land.
And the skateboard park that's there came through a county grant.
Right, I understand that, but I guess I'm confused on who's paying for the field now, since the field was created wrong or wasn't done the way it needed to be to begin with. Is this coming out of the grant as well, or is this taxpayer money or baseball paying for the field? All the work that's getting done, the dirt being brought in, the construction, the concrete, the labor, who's paying for that now? Is that the town, is that residents paying for that with the taxes, or is there a grant for that?
No, right now, there's money budgeted to move forward, and it's coming through township funds, and the lights were bonded.
Some of the things I think were donated. I couldn't tell you specifically, Mike might know, or Ed, but some of it, wasn't the sod donated at one point?
Yeah, the side was bought by the baseball association.
Right, so some of the things are a combination.
Coming from the baseball association.
Well, do we know how much it's costing out of taxpayer money to redo the facilities, since they weren't done right to begin with? I mean, if you have certain amounts that were allotted for it, obviously the rest of the money has to come from somewhere. So where's that coming from? And do we know how much? I mean, obviously it's coming from the taxpayers, but how much of it? How much of it is going towards that, towards the labor, towards the work, towards the township vehicles that are in use, the constructed vehicles being used and all that? Where's that money coming from? And how much is it?
Well,
It comes out of the recreation fund.
Yeah. If I could, that's in the recreation
For
budget.
operations.
So that money was budgeted this year to redo those facilities?
That money's budgeted to do anything we need to be done with it for recreation. It's not earmarked specifically for one item.
we're using our own staff.
Right, I understand that, which means you're paying them and everything out of this budget, correct?
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you don't know how much of that budget is going toward Amanda's Field yet. You have no idea. You're just spending money over there to redo it, but you don't know how much you're spending over there. Is that what I'm understanding? The money's there, you have this big budget of recreation, and you're just sending guys down there, you're sending trucks down there, you're sending equipment down there, and paying for merchandise, or excuse me, paying for materials and all this, but you don't know how much it's costing you?
First of all.
Is there a plan? Is there a plan drawn up? Original plan when the amendment was first made, and now a plan now that's being followed that you should be able to look at and know exactly how long it's going to take, how much money it's going to spend to do it, how much the materials are going to cost. Is there something in existence of that nature?
Basically, everything we're doing out there is with materials out of the pit. So we're not buying any more materials than what was already purchased prior to this.
Okay. Set aside the dirt from the pit. Okay, fencing.
Our main investment.
Concrete, we'll be looking for sponsors and maybe for some relief from some of the other people to help us with that aspect of it.
Okay.
But that's an ongoing. Okay, the problem is we don't have a set crew out there, and I went through this before. It's hard to put an earmark on how much it's going to cost when we don't know if I'm going to have 2 guys, 5 guys, for how long, are they there a half a day? So we can do a rough estimate, but I mean, it would be way off base because there's no way of knowing.
Well then, this is why I'm confused as to why we're putting lights on the facility, that we don't know how much it's going to cost to get ready in order to be able to even use the facility. When you could have put lights on a field where they could just put dugouts up, and use that facility for lights.
You can't use softball fields for Little League or
Why
Big
can't
League.
you? You're recreating an entire
You
field
know what,
right now.
we're not gonna sit here and argue.
No, I'm not arguing.
I get that, but we're giving you the answers.
Yeah.
As you're asking one question at
All
a
your-
time.
okay.
All your
But you've
dimensions-
already been here with 25 questions, so, let's, what other things you wanna have?
I'm sorry, Rich, but you can't incorporate Little League fields, Babe Ruth fields with softball fields because of the mount.
Okay.
All right. Also, all the dimensions are different. All the base paths are different. Infields are cut out different. Distance to the backstops are different.
Okay.
And if we did put them out back, they would no longer be men's softball fields.
You know, I think we might be able to give you directionally an answer to your question. We obviously know how we assign our people every day. We know what the wages of those people are. So maybe what we could do is we'll ask Public Works for their schedules for the past 6 months. And we can work out that allocation of labor for you to give you an idea of how many labor hours were sent there. Because Public Works does keep a daily schedule, so we ought to be able to tell how many people were allocated out there. It is something that you are entitled to know as a taxpayer, and you have a right to know that. And I believe that we do have the process in place to be able to deliver that answer to you.
Yeah, because I mean, I think it would only make sense to know exactly how much money you're going to spend out of the recreation budget towards something like that, or at least a really close estimate, as opposed to just sending people down there to do work and, oh, we got to spend this, we got to spend that, now we got to pay for this, and so on and so on and so on. And then you're short later on when you need other things from the budget for other facilities and things of that nature.
All right, well, rather than prolong the evening, could we perhaps engage Mr. Diedrich in speaking with the Public Works Department to get a picture of what the manpower allocation has looked like over, let's just say, I don't know how long the project's been going on, but let's just say from June of 2014 on.
Excuse me, John, I think I can handle that. I'll take care of that.
Okay.
Great, that's it.
We can get it up to date, but again, it's just, we can earmark it, Kevin, that's as close as we can get, so.
Oh, all right, great, thanks.
Anyone else? Yes.
Natalie East Petersburg. First, I'd like to bring to attention that there have been 3 separate vehicle accidents in my front yard on Highway 50 in 9 months with damage to my property. I think that when the state went through and repaved the highway, that they changed the elevation and the slope. And I don't know, I know I've been here before asking the township to help support me with the issues of the state, the problems that I have on my property. So I wanted to bring that up. And for the record, the last time I was here on February 23rd, was to voice my opposition to a resolution. It was resolution number 57, 2015. Today I inquired with Barbara Spiegel, and I think she said Terry had the answer to what, with regard to insurance liability in the township. I wanted to know what the insurance aggregate was. So,
And I think I directed you to the clerk's office for that inquiry.
I thought you said somebody named Terry at the Public Works office.
She's right behind you.
That's why I'm asking. Do you know what the insurance aggregate is?
Yes. What did she say?
No, what it is.
You know what, I don't know that it's appropriate that you're putting, Ms. Right. If you have specific questions, you can ask us and, we can relay the message back to you.
Okay, with regard to the liability insurance, I'm wondering what the insurance aggregate is.
Okay.
Tonight I wanted to talk more about no resolution in the 1995 taking of my property. There were no notices, no meetings, no vote, and no resolution, and I wanted to know how you did that.
I don't have complete knowledge of it, but my recollection was you asked the same question about 4 years ago. Mr. Dietrich reviewed it, and I believe I sent you a letter on it that told you what the township had in terms of records, and that I think I directed you to go back to Mr. Carr because he was the one that presented the revised survey to the planning board, and he represented him. He was your surveyor, and I believe you had a personal relationship with him at the time, and I suggested that you go back to him and find out what happened because we don't have any record of it other than he presented it to the planning office and said, this is a correction, could you sign off? It's a more correct version of what you approved a year or two before. That's my understanding and recollection of what we talked about in, I believe it was 2011. So if it's the same question, there's a letter that we generated after Paul looked into it and I looked into it, and we can get that for you and get it back to you, but the situation hasn't changed. We're talking about something from 20 years ago.
Okay. Mr. Holt, I don't know, Holtz, whatever his name was, came out to the last meeting and was complaining about having to pay for noticing and copies of documents and whatnot. And I think I heard Hobie say that he was the zoning officer in 1991, and this was the only case he ever heard of. But the bottom line is, in 1991, I did a subdivision, and I paid for it. And this was in 19...
That was addressed at least 4 years ago, approximately 4 years ago. Paul and I went through it. We sent you a letter and told you what the township records were. We can get that. I probably have at least a copy of the letter in my files, and we can get that to you. But you're talking about something that happened 20 years ago, and we've already, 4 years ago, told you what records we had.
But the point I want to make is that you all went behind my back.
That's not true. That is not true.
You didn't hold the meetings.
That's not true.
You didn't advertise.
I can tell you that's not true.
Well, where's the resolution then? Where was the vote? How did you change, how did you do another subdivision?
I was not the solicitor involved in that at all.
I think you were in 1995. You were the planning board.
In 91, when you received your approval,
Not in
I was
91,
not the
Thornton
solicitor.
was. In 95, when
In
my
95,
surveyor
I was the
was in
solicitor, but your
91.
matter in 95 did not go before the board. Your surveyor came in
No,
and
it
said...
wasn't my surveyor in 95.
Yes, he was.
My surveyor was
Yes,
in
he was.
1991.
Our records show he was your surveyor. It was
Not
Mr.
in
Carr.
95, he wasn't.
Well, I'm not going to argue with you. I told you 4 years ago in a letter what records the township had.
Right, and you have no record of it. You went and took my property into
Nobody
another...
took your property.
You signed the paperwork and sent it down to the county, and they made a new subdivision that supersedes mine, okay?
Natalie, I don't know what to tell you. This was all reviewed 4 years ago. We showed you all the records the township had. It was what was done allegedly by your surveyor.
It wasn't my
Let me
surveyor.
finish, please. Allegedly by your surveyor, who came in and represented, who was doing it for you. I suggested to you, Mr. Carr was around. He was around 4 years ago. Go ask him why he did that. I have no idea why he did it, but the planning office, not the planning board that I represented, the planning office took his revised survey and signed off on it. That's what happened.
Okay.
Nobody from the township did anything other than that.
Well, the township did not hold meetings, you did not take a vote, there was no resolution, and you have no record of it, yet the county has a subdivision that supersedes my subdivision. And in 2005, there was an issue that Mr. Dietrich called neighborhood dispute. I had a 5-year running battle because my neighbors thought that they had 10 foot of my property, and they went on my property and cut down my trees, okay? And over the last several years, I've been coming in here asking about the tax map corrections. And maybe I should ask, what's the status of the tax map corrections in regard to my property, block 45613?
They're up at the surveyor to be revised.
And how many years has that been going on?
Since he's had it, it's only been about 3 months.
3 months.
Yes.
Well, I've been coming in here for years about that, about the tax map corrections, that the tax maps were wrong because they don't align with my subdivision.
There's only
Plus, we
one-
had the cutting down of the trees.
There's
and-
only one distance call that's different from the most current filed subdivision plat for your property and the tax map. There's only one distance call that needs to get changed.
I disagree with you.
I'd be happy to sit down with you, like we have several other times, and show you the differences.
Well, there's an issue right now because we just did a reevaluation, and I have 3 properties, and I have assessments on 3 properties, and I can't even get information on what you based the assessment on. And I brought to the tax office attention that the one parcel that I have is a triangle. And they have it listed as a rectangle. And then they tried to tell me that somebody went out there and looked at it. Not to my knowledge. I mean, what did they do? Go in by helicopter? And,
You'd have to
you know,
talk
and
to
I
the tax
called Mr. Young about this, and you said go into the tax office. Well, that girl just stonewalled me, and
My
now I'm
understanding is when
past
you-
the window of the informal. Therefore, I'm now going to have to do a formal.
You had missed the informal, that you were supposed to respond in 5 days, and apparently you weren't able to do so, and you weren't able to get scheduled for the informals. That's what the tax office told me. When you went in, they did not have the records because they were in the process of packaging them up to get the notices out. If you go back in, they will have the property record cards that you asked for. I'm sure you'll be able to get that information, but the day you were there, they were unable to give it to you. That's my understanding of what happened when you went in to see them.
Well, then I'd ask to have a meeting with you and her, because that's not what she told me. She told me I couldn't get those property cards until after May or the formal.
Well, it depends on what you're looking for. If it hasn't been produced yet, the record doesn't exist yet because of the revaluation, yes, and I'm not sure. I thought they would be produced when they set the values, but maybe there's a delay in actually producing the record card. So I may be incorrect with that.
And the other
You
thing,
I can't produce something, and the township can't produce something if it doesn't exist yet.
well, she told me that the tax assessment was on the tax map. And again, how are you doing a tax assessment on my property if, you know, he's admitting that there's at least one distance call that's out of line?
I've talked with the assessor, and that distance call discrepancy between your map and what the tax map had would not affect the value of your property.
Good question. Is this it's a property line dispute as far as?
Yes, and years ago, I explained to
Shouldn't
Ms.
this be
Neese-
covered under her title insurance?
It could be, if she had title insurance, and also it could be resolved between the 2 neighbors to establish the line. Whenever a survey's wrong, 2 neighbors can easily establish the line by recording something at the county. I explained that years ago to Natalie. I don't want to put words in Natalie's mouth, but I believe she thinks that because she apparently didn't authorize her surveyor to get the revised subdivision map signed, that the township has some kind of liability.
Before
And I
we,
explained,
I probably should have asked before I even opened my mouth up. Does this involve my cousin's property in that, or is that to your other side? Which,
Well-
is involved John's property line, or, but if it is, I can't ask any questions on it.
He seems to think that it's only one property
No,
line, but it's,
I'm just
it's at
asking.
least, it's at least 10 foot off the rear on the railroad track, okay? And then coming up at the Costanzo
Is it the line adjacent to John Young's property?
Oh, you mean on that side?
On my cousin, on your left-hand side?
No, it's the other,
Okay.
it's the railroad track that's at least 10 foot.
I
then
just wanted to
coming up the
clarify so
line.
there was no conflict.
Okay, so it's 10 foot off the rear on the railroad, it's 274 foot up, and then it jogs for 20 feet, and then it's another 50 feet, and then it's
Well, you know what,
several
Natalie,
hundred.
not to interrupt you, but I think Mr. Dietrich has offered to meet with you to go over the survey, and maybe we can also coordinate something with the tax assessor and, you know, try and put this, you know, like educate you and work with what we have, you know, to inform you of the documents that we have in place. But, you know, right now we're going to be spinning wheels because we don't have this document in front of us. And the engineer, who we would rely on his expertise anyway, has offered to meet with you. So I would suggest that you do that.
Spinning wheels, yeah, I agree. But if I meet with him, he's gonna say, it's this subdivision, and I'm gonna say, it's this subdivision. So how are we gonna come to terms about which subdivision it is? Because the second one that took place was done behind closed doors, and there was no resolution, there was no vote.
Well,
So, I mean, and I keep having all these ripple down effects, these.
That's the car thing you're talking about?
yes,
Yeah.
her surveyor,
It
the
was
best,
not,
let-
listen,
can I
please,
speak, please?
please, it was not, in 1991 I hired, after that, my surveyor was Gibson, okay?
All I can tell you is what the records of the township have.
I had
okay?
nothing to do with
May
that.
I-
My
may I
sister
finish?
died in
May I
1995.
finish?
I wish you'd quit saying that, because I heard him say it last week, and I wasn't quick
Right.
enough to say
The
something
record,
about it.
you asked me a question, am I allowed to
Yes.
respond to it?
Absolutely.
The records of the township, and again, I have to pull it because I'm going from memory from 4 years ago. The records of the township show that she received a subdivision in 1991, and that it was recorded, and that a few years later, the surveyor came in to the planning office and presented a survey that he said was correction. I don't know how big it was, and it was the same surveyor that got the approval on behalf of Natalie in 1991, Mr. Carr. And that apparently was signed off by the
Al Herman.
Let me finish. He asked me the question, Natalie, please.
It was signed off by the property owner?
No,
surveyor.
no, it was not
Hold
by the
it,
property
please,
owner.
Natalie, please. If you have an opportunity to speak, these guys are trying to explain to us you want to know an answer, we're trying to get to it.
It was signed off by the surveyor, the property owner, planning board chairperson, planning board secretary, the township engineer at the time, and then filed in the county clerk's office. And that last recorded plat, that corrected plat, is what is of record on the township.
Natalie has no knowledge of that. That's what she's telling us, and I guess she's saying it wasn't her signature. Is that what you're saying? The signature on that document was not yours in 95?
I signed in 1991, and what he's talking about is a cut and paste. I mean, you can obviously see it, okay? And this was after my sister died.
And let me finish.
And so I was, you know, who
Let me
was the
finish the
property
rest of it.
owner?
Let me finish the rest of it. The only record we have is that document that was signed off and that was recorded. And the township has no ability to change anything. If there's a dispute between property owners, you both need to get a survey and you can resolve it. If there's no dispute, you can resolve it without a survey. A new surveyor could go in there, determine where the correct line is if that 95 survey was incorrect, and either that could be refiled or both property owners can do a deed that says this is the correct line. That's how you change it at the county records. The township can't change it any other way.
Well, how's the township going to change the line on the railroad then? Because that's clearly 116 foot.
Well, that's a correction on a tax map, correct,
But
Paul?
no, it's not just the tax map, it's the, I think
We only
it's
control
in
the tax map. We don't control your surveys or your title.
I do agree, there's a distance call on that rear line from it's different from that last recorded corrected plat and the tax map, and it's a minor discrepancy in what the distance call is. Would not affect the tax
But
assessment.
we don't affect title, we're just changing the tax map to what you
Correct.
think is accurate.
Correct.
Can I ask a question? The sideline we're talking about, could this been resurveyed due to a sale of a property? And maybe Carr did that and picked up, even though he did 91, he did the resale of on a resale and picked up the discrepancy and just made the change?
I'm only looking at the document, because unfortunately, I wasn't here
Yeah.
in that time, so I'm just looking at the documents that are on file in the township, so.
And it never went back to the planning board. So the guess is that her surveyor came in with a signed document and said, this corrects the one we just got 3 years ago, or whatever the heck it was. And the planning official signed off on it without it going to a board. That's the best we can guess.
Because the line, the change doesn't affect, the subdivision creates an internal, has one parcel and creates a line and creates separate parcels.
I'm just trying to make sense of...
That corrected plat didn't change where that line was, or affecting the lot areas or the geometry of those lots. It was affecting an outbound portion of the lot, and that's what was changed on the map.
That really, you would need to have the surveyor come in or talk to your neighbor and have it resurveyed, and then your title and everything, your title insurance, then it should cover it if you have title insurance.
If you had title insurance, but it's inherited property, right? So
It
you
was
probably don't
inherited
have it.
property, exactly, and now my deeds reflect my subdivision. So there is a cloud on my deeds and
So,
the neighbor's deeds, which
without
have
Mr. Carr
passed
being here,
6
we really don't
times.
know what happened.
I'm sorry?
Without Mr. Carr to answer any questions, we don't know what happened.
Carr,
You
you don't need Carr. Actually, it was Gibson.
And represented the neighbor
It was
in
Gibson that
95.
went in there and did it, okay? Because what happened was my mother died in 91, and I was the only executrix, and I did the subdivision. And my sister got this one parcel next to 2 that I have, and she died in 1995. And when the parcel got sold, Gibson went in there to do, for the well and septic design, and that's when they found the jog in the line, which I never knew about until later. And it was a parcel that, because I was the only executrix, it should have come back, everybody should have been noticed, and I should have been brought in. It belonged to me. It was 20 foot by at least 50 foot. So I feel that, because the township went behind my back, whether they did it
No.
with Tom
Town-
Carr, they did it with
it's
Gibson, or
obvious
they
that
did it with
the township-
O'Donnell,
the
whoever they
township
did
took-
it with, they took my
Township
ground.
took a document signed by a certified licensed surveyor. Obviously, the surveyor that handled your application in 91. Even if he didn't represent you in 95, he was the surveyor of record, right, Paul?
Yes.
So if
And the
they come
document
in and
has the
he
owner's signature on
certifies
it.
it, we have to accept it. We're not surveyors.
And it had the owner's signature on it as well.
It would be up to you to challenge his survey, not the township.
Your real claim is with the surveyor. If what you think happened, then your claim is against the surveyor, and that's what we told you 4 years ago. You need to go contact the surveyor, because that is the only person that would have perpetuated a fraud, as you allege.
Well, it was Curtis Corson who signed that as chairman of the
He
board.
doesn't know,
And there was
just like
no
a-
meeting.
Just like if someone gives you a bank check, a check that's got the bad signature on it, you don't know that. And that may be what happened. They get signatures every day. They assume they're valid.
Well, the township has one map in the tax office, another map in the engineer's office. I mean, you can see as they progressed, you're holding 3 different maps with 3 different dates on them. So clearly, it was done between Corson, Al Herman, and Shelley Lee. And my point is, I spent the money to do the surveys, the engineering, and the deeds back in 91. And now, it all has to be changed, and you're telling me I have to go hire a surveyor? Well, I mean, when
You need to
Costanza
go
went
back
over
to-
there and cut down my trees, You know?
You
The
need to
property
go to the
belongs me.
surveyor that did the resurvey in 95 or whatever the year was, and ask him where's the information coming, and how come he's certified that that was true. Legally, we can't do it, right? It's not our position.
It's not our problem, it's not our issue, it's a title issue, it's an alleged inaccurate survey. If you take face value of what Natalie's saying, there's an allegation of fraud by the surveyor.
By the surveyor.
At the time.
Not by the township.
But not by the township. The township was presented with a document that was assumed to be valid at the time with your authority. They didn't record it with the county, somebody else recorded it. Township doesn't record documents with the county. You were told that 4 years ago when we went over this last
But all the
time.
documents I have is Curtis Corson recorded it with the
No,
county.
no, I
And it
told
was
you
all
that.
mailed to him.
4 years
It's all
ago,
returned
when
to
you
him.
raised that same question,
Emily,
I said the
please
same
listen
thing.
to,
I am, but I have the
well,
documents.
you're not, because every time he's trying to explain something to you, you're interrupted.
4 years ago, you raised the same allegation, and I told you, the planning office does not record documents. They sign off on them, and it is the duty of the applicant or the applicant's representatives, often the surveyor, the planner, the lawyer for the applicant, that records the documents if the applicant does not. I told you that that's why you should go talk to the surveyor that produced it, presented it to the township, obtained the township signatures, alleged to the township that you had signed it with your signature on it, and then my guess is he took that to the county. Now, I don't, it's not the township's job to go after the surveyor and find out why he did that on your behalf and why it was wrong. You have a claim against that surveyor, which is exactly what we talked about 4 years ago. And this happened 20 years ago.
So then if I wanted to go do a subdivision on my property, say I go get an engineer and a surveyor or whatever, and come back here, are you just gonna go in some room and just sign the papers? Or are you gonna tell me that I have to, notice everybody and, go through that whole process again to do a subdivision that corrects it?
This was just a lot
We've
line.
answered that
This-
question 3 times already.
This is just a lot line adjustment by the
That's a
surveyor
simple,
record.
it's probably, if the neighbors get along, does your neighbor agree where the line is?
I've never talked to them about it, to
Well,
tell
if
you
you
the
talk to your
truth.
neighbor and they agree where the line is, you're probably talking a couple $100 for a surveyor to establish that line and write it up, and then a deed could be prepared for maybe another $100 and maybe $50 for recording charge. If everything is agreed to, it's a simple process to get
Okay,
it done.
well, what if it's not agreed to, and furthermore, I don't think it will be agreed to.
And that's a title
because
issue between you and your
They
neighbor.
have meets and bounds on their deeds that do not comply with any
That is
subdivision.
a fairly common in rural areas title issue that has to be resolved. And there are procedures for that, but it's not the township's job to resolve a dispute between 2 adjoining property owners. It's the property owners that have to resolve it, either by agreeing to where that line is, or by presenting their case to a judge and have a judge decide where that line is.
So when you do the tax map correction on my property, how's that gonna be done?
The township takes the best information they have and establishes the line on the tax map. And it's not guaranteed to be accurate. It's never guaranteed to be accurate. It's not a title survey.
Okay, and with regard to, the one piece that I'm saying is a triangle, and I'm being charged on a rectangle,
When the information is available, you can go to the tax assessor. Mr. Dietrich said he would assist you with it, and that could be explained to them. If you need to appeal your taxes because it's inaccurate or it affects your value, that can be done as well. There's a process for that.
okay, it not only affects my value, it's my property. I mean, the railroad goes through there. And
Again,
it's my
the
understanding I
township
own the
doesn't
property.
establish where your line is.
Right, but I own it. The railroad just has an easement, and if this goes to a gas plant and the railroad pulls out, all that, the tracks will come out and all the ground will come back.
I don't know what else to say. I've answered the question 3 or 4 times.
I think you need to go hire a surveyor and have them shoot that property line, see if your neighbor will share the cost with you and agree to where that line is. It's the only way you're gonna have an answer. We can't give you that answer. We're not surveyors. Paul's not a surveyor. We can't come out and shoot that line.
again, I don't, you know, when I paid to do the subdivision, and I paid for all that work to be done, and people did things behind my back, we're not talking about just one neighbor, okay? I'm talking about 3 neighbors that would have to agree. And there are clouds now on all their deeds because of this. They're not gonna agree.
Well, then all 3 neighbors have to get involved to get it straightened out. I mean,
And that sometimes is expensive, but again, it's a private title issue between property owners. It is not the township's responsibility to resolve title issues that are private between property owners.
So then, none of you see any problem with the fact that your people, and that zoning board, just signed off on documents that allowed this
first of all,
situation to
it was
happen?
probably the planning board for a subdivision.
It wasn't the plan, never went back to the planning board.
No, but it was probably came in and
The surveyor?
presented as a minor lot line adjustment, which wouldn't require to go back if it was done by the same surveyor.
The surveyor came, as best as the files can determine, the surveyor came back and said, I made a mistake on the one that was filed a couple years ago. Will you sign off on this one? And apparently they did that. Should that have gone to the board? If I had known about it at the time, I probably would have said that needs to go back to the board, okay? But I didn't know about it. I had no record of it. That's what the records showed at the planning office.
And if it didn't create a variance situation,
It was just a minor adjustment of line, my understanding.
and that's been done. I've seen
Minor
that done many
formality may
times.
not be the same thing.
Thank you, Mr. Young. I appreciate that, you know, that you finally said that. But I mean, it wasn't just a minor. It was at least 20 foot by 50 foot that I could have acquired a driveway into the rear of my property coming off of the so-called no-name street.
But this is all conjecture, because all we have is the 91 approval, the 91 recording, the 95 sign off. There's no record of anything going back to the planning board. So what allegedly happened was that Tom Carr came in and said, I made a mistake, this needs to be adjusted, here's the owner signed off, I signed off, will the planning board sign off? And the planning board didn't sign off, it was the chair and the engineer. The chair's no longer here, different engineer. I don't know if was Shelley the secretary of the board? I don't know what Shelley's recollection was at the time, but the bottom line is it's 20 years ago. We can't change that, and if it created a title problem for you, your claim is against that surveyor that came in and did that. And my understanding is you know him. It's not like you can't talk to him. I don't know what he did and why.
You're the one that keeps saying that it was my surveyor. I don't believe that it was my surveyor. I believe that it was Gibson and that it was O'Donnell.
it was Thomas
who,
Carr.
When O'Donnell purchased the property and he needed to put the
I can
water and
have
sewer
The
in.
document has the surveyor's name and signature on it.
Natalie, and over the last 10 years, we have sat in my office at least 4 times and discussed this, and I've shown you the map.
Were
I'll
you
be
working
happy
for
to show
Gibson
you
at the
again
time?
and show you the Thomas Carr corrective plat that he brought in for signatures. He did it.
You weren't here. Were you working for Gibson at the time?
You mind, what?
No.
It's a Thomas Carr plat.
Around
There's no
95.
Gibson name on the Thomas Carr plat.
But my name was cut and pasted
Property on the
in.
no-name
How
street
do
that
you
you're
know
talking
Carr's
about
name
was
wasn't
sold.
cut and pasted in?
Now,
That's
the back, just real quick, just trying to clarify something. You're saying that the back property on the no-name street, all right, the one that my cousin Eddie built, sold in about 1995. I would almost bet the Carr did the survey on that again for him.
Yeah, but this is
And
all
fa- and-
conjecture.
No, but I mean,
don't
and then
know.
found the change,
All-
but
all we
I'm trying to
know
get
is
her to
that Mr.
understand.
Carr presented a document that was signed off by township officials.
Yeah.
That's all we know.
That's why I know that the rear line on the railroad is wrong, because the deed on that back parcel that your cousin did never changed. It was always 70 foot. So that's why when
But
he
it-
cut down my trees, there was no discrepancy in who the land belonged to.
Again, if Mr. Carr did the survey for him and did your subdivision, that could be where the confusion comes in. I'm just trying to look at a logical answer.
What? This is, Mr. Carr did the survey and what?
If he did your subdivision, and when the property that you're talking about was sold,
Carr did my subdivision in 91.
right, and then the other property sold somewhere around 95.
I think it was 85.
No, I think it was, well, I'm not gonna get into, but
Yeah, I know it was 85.
if Carr did the subdivision, or did the survey for that, for the sale,
No,
he could have picked up the discrepancy at that time.
no.
But we don't know that.
I know it. It was Gibson that picked it up when they did the,
Right, so you've heard what Mr. Young says, you've heard what Mr. Dietrich says. You can provide the document again, please.
I can,
And it's Mr. Young's recommendation that at this time, it makes sense to take the document and go to Mr. Carr and question why this was done.
My point is that I keep having this trickle-down effect. Now it's a reevaluation, okay? And, the tax map, I guess, will be next. We'll be arguing over, what that is.
You can't get your answer unless you go to Mr. Carr.
And I can
That's
tell
as
you,
simple
Natalie,
as
you
this is.
raised this, I believe, at one of your tax appeals previously, and it did not impact value. Wherever the line is, whether it's from the 1991 line or the 1995 line, it didn't impact your value of your property. So the assessment doesn't matter whether or not, it doesn't impact it. It's not negative to you in terms of the value of your property.
But you agreed that if you were aware of this back at the time, you would have recommended that it go back before the planning board.
If
That
it was
my point.
1995 and I was sitting at the board and they said, this needs to be corrected, I would say that has to come to the board. And we have no record of it going to the board. We've always said that to you. Nobody's ever said that. And obviously, to adjust the map, it should come back to the board. But we're not the ones that brought it to art. We didn't make that up. Somebody came in with your signature, allegedly, on a map from your surveyor and said, I'd like you to fix this to me, I made a mistake. At least that's what I assume what happened because the line was changed. I assume that's what happened. But we're talking 20 years ago.
I can tell you that I know that previous to the resolution on my subdivision, other people had to come before the board to get corrections.
I don't have an answer for that. There's no files on it, there's no records on it. And that's essentially what I said to you 4 years ago. And I think I've said this, I don't know how many times, 3 or 4 times. I'm trying to be polite, but we
Okay.
keep saying the same thing over again.
That's fine, I'll keep saying it, okay? Because I don't feel that it was fair what happened. And where was the oversight when it happened? How come Corson got to sign that paper, that document that superseded my subdivision and got it filed with the, I don't care who filed it.
The
It got
township
done.
cannot resolve, it has no authority to resolve a property line disagreement between neighbors. It has no authority to do that. If you're asking the township, fix my property line, it can't do it.
Well, maybe it all came about because the guy needed some more ground there or a certain part of the ground to put his sand mound septic system in. And maybe it was the county.
But the township has no jurisdiction in a private property line dispute or
Now, but
resolution.
back then, it
It
was
has
all
no
quietly
jurisdiction
done,
to do this.
okay? Because the county was involved in it and Gibson was involved in it.
You need to talk to the surveyor. That's,
For what?
I'm not gonna explain it again.
I've been talking to this board about how you can
And
allow this stuff to go on.
You need to
Well, first of
talk to the
all,
surveyor.
No one on this committee was on the board or on the committee 20 years ago.
I believe you're.
No, I wasn't. I'm in my 18th year, so I wasn't on the board in
You weren't on
1995.
zoning?
Were you on the planning board?
I might have been on the planning board.
Yeah, you were involved
But-
with planning and the zoning board at the
Not-
time. And so
Actually, it
was
wasn't on the
Cross-
planning board, I was on the zoning board.
Right, the zoning board.
Right, so that would have come
It's
before the
not the
zoning.
zoning board. Zoning board had no jurisdiction on
Right.
any subdivisions.
I was on the zoning board, I wasn't on the planning board.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, since there's no further public comment, I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session, and I'll call on Mr. Coggins to read the motion.
I hereby move that a resolution be incorporated into the minutes authorizing the Township Committee to enter into an executive session for the following matters pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act. Contract negotiation for 4th of July fireworks, cell tower leases, township engineer, shared services with Dennis Township, shared services with Cape May County for heavy equipment fleet maintenance, litigation on Upper Township versus Yank and Sansone, safety and security issues, and personnel. I also include in my motion the estimated time and the circumstances under which the discussion conducted in closed session can be disclosed to the public as follows. It is anticipated that the matters discussed in closed session may be disclosed to the public upon the determination of the Township Committee that the public interest will no longer be served by such confidentiality. With respect to employment and personnel matters, such discussions will be made public if and when formal action is taken or when individuals involved consent that it can be made public. With respect to contract negotiations, such matters will be made public when negotiations have ceased and there is no longer reason for confidentiality. With respect to litigation matters, such discussions will be made public when litigation is complete and when the applicable appeal period has expired.
Second. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Pierce?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
We ask all of you to have a nice evening. Please drive safely home.